Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and the science of the stuff we're putting on our feet. I'm Andrea Myers, and today I've got David Salas with us. And hey, David, it's been a while since we've done an episode together.
We have, yeah. It's been a minute.
Yeah,
It's good.
I like our episodes together.
Yeah.
This is good. Yeah. So today, David and I thought we would talk about racing shorter distances, and what shorter distances means to us might mean something different to you. So we're going to define what we mean by shorter, talk about the energy systems involved, talk about training, of course, talk about the shoes that we like for shorter distance racing. So let's get right into the subjective. So, of course, it's a question about shoes. So we want to know, what's your favorite shoe for running fast? Just leave that in the comments. We love to hear your input on what your favorites are. All right, David. So I'm going to let you take the first question. So what the heck do we mean by shorter distance racing? What are we talking about here today?
Yeah, and that's kind of a loaded question, right? Like, depending on who you're talking to. I think running is such a beautiful sport because of the massive variety of distances and different, energy systems, body types, like athletes, like people. There's just like anything from like the 60 meters indoors to like 100-mile races. It is a foot race of people running, right?
Yes.
So what is short? That is a loaded question, but I think some people, if you're more of a track purist and you're looking at it from a physiologic standpoint, some people might even argue it's 400 meters and down, which is not really what we are going to be talking about as much. But that would be the purest, like, track, like those are your sprint events, right? But I would argue in terms of energy systems and what our crowd usually is, where most of our audience is probably 5K and up, I would imagine. But I would say pretty much anything 1,500 and down, with the caveat that sometimes even the 5K for some people can also dip into that. As far as being a quote unquote shorter distance, because there is such a high lactate production, and that is a concern with how quick you're moving and how fast that is producing, and why it is important to pace yourself. So
amen to that.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Andrea went out in an 800 and
too fast.
What was it? Was 64? Is that what you said?
They said the split was 64, which was horrifying, but it turned out to be 66.
That's still flying. Yeah. I don't even know, like, if I ran an 800 right now, if I'd be going out in 66. That's a lie. I probably would do the same exact thing and go out hard. But
yeah, 64 was my 400 PR in high school. So when they said our split was 64, I was like, uh-oh. But I just got to hang on.
You're already in it at that point.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Yeah. And it reminded me of the 1,000 deaths you can die in the last 400 of an 800. But I still ran a 225, which is phenomenal. Yeah, which is good. Yeah. It was a 5-second lifetime PR, so you can't complain too much about that. But there are less painful ways to run a 225.
It reminds me in college where there'd be a lot of people that would just like go out in a 52 and then run like a 153 or 154. And I'm just like, that must hurt.
Yeah.
Like, to just,
oh my gosh.
Like your last lap's over 60 seconds, but you're still running decent times, but you're just like,
right.
That's got to be awful. Got to run a 52 first. Dang. Like, that's my PR. My 400 PR is 52. So I can't imagine going out in a 52. You know, like, that would be nuts.
Yeah. The 800 is such an interesting event, though, because it's one of the only events, I mean, besides the 400, where you do have to positive split it to run a good race. Yeah.
Yeah. Or pretty close to even. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One does not simply negative split an 800.
No, definitely not.
I'm trying to think. Nick Symmonds has done a few really, really good even-ish split races. Yeah. Or it's like, I'm thinking like back in like prime David Rudisha era where like, you know, he's running 141. He still has the world record, no? 140?
Yes. Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah. But like he would go out in like 50 and then run a 52, right? Like, and it's like, that's pretty even.
Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah.
And then you'd have guys like Simmons running an opening lap of 52 and dead last, and then running another 52 and running 144 and having a great day and placing,
Right.
you know, or like
Yeah.
even in the case where he ran 142 in one of those races. That was the Olympic final when Rudisha ran the world record. And that was, I think that was a 51-51, if I'm not mistaken. It might have, maybe that was close to negative. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be really,
but it's not common. It's
no,
not, yeah,
definitely
it's not
not
common at all.
Although I think it will be interesting to see if it becomes more common now that more 800 runners are using bicarb. Like now that Morton has that product that, you know, theoretically doesn't destroy your stomach.
Right. People have been using bicarb forever, though.
Yeah, but now it's more accessible because of the whatever Morton did to it. They encapsulated it so it doesn't cause awful GI distress. Yeah.
That's always been the big gripe with like the buffering agents.
Yes.
It's like, that's an interesting point. Are we talking about that stuff today? We're not talking about drugs? No drugs?
No.
Okay.
But bicarb's not.
It's not
illegal.
It's not illegal, but it's a drug.
I mean, it's baking
You're taking
soda.
something.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Sodium bicarb or sodium citrate or all kinds of stuff people use.
Yeah.
But
all right, we'll move on.
We'll move on.
Yeah, we already did the supplement episode with Jen Giles. So
yes.
All right, so maybe David, I actually don't even know this answer. Like when you were in high school and college, what were your main events? Like, did you go all the way down to the 8, or were you more of like a 15 5K guy, or what?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't talk about it much.
Yeah.
I'm too scarred. No,
this is a safe space here, David.
This is a safe space. Yes. Yeah. We're both in the corner of a room.
I know.
Enclosed in a tight space talking to one another. This is safe. In high school. So, I mean, I don't think it's that much of a secret. In college, I was a little bit of an injured mess. I would race very okay, but I was kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of chronically underperforming. I would say I would think I would think my coaches would agree with that. Mm-hmm. Even, you know, however many years later, I think 10-ish years later. But in high school, I was primarily a cross country runner. So I ran 4:24 in the 1600, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And especially by today's standards, shoot, I don't even know what's good anymore.
Yeah, but you didn't have super shoes back then, right?
Yeah, no. I was running in the flimsy little, the Brooks Wire had just come out. Do you remember that track spike? Or
no.
Yeah, this was like in that latency period where like I think Klein and I are the only ones that know of this shoe's existence on our team.
Well, yeah, you were in high school.
Super thin little like thin wiry like outsole with like a spike plate on the front.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mainly did cross country. I think I ran 14:56, I think, as a high schooler. Not full 5K. That was a 3-mile cross course, but but I couldn't break. I think my PR in the 32 is probably like 9:40-ish. And I think when I broke 15 for the first time, I split like 9:48 or something. You know what I mean? Like, so I couldn't like quite figure out the 2 mile. So I wasn't that good at it. And then the mile, there's not much time to think. You're just kind of racing. So I think that helped. But when I got to college, this is like a deep dive history I was not expecting today.
The viewers are here for it, though.
Yeah. I think we got to college, and then obviously cross country's in the fall, so that went first. And I actually didn't have that bad of a freshman year. I ran 20-25 flat in the 8K. But that was kind of the start of when all of the injuries started coming on later in that season. And so I actually had a little tear in my peroneal like at the end of the season. And I was just like constantly like racing, taking like a week off and like getting ready, because you usually race bi-weekly in a collegiate cross setting. And so it's like every other week. So it got to that kind of not so fun cycle of like, okay, race, take some time off, kind of get good enough again to race, and then take some time off. And then, retrospectively, probably not the best idea, but it tore like during the NCAA regional, which was like crazy.
Yeah.
Like so I just remember being like in Seattle, Washington, like running this course, and like we went through 4 miles, I think, in like high 19s. So I would have been on pace for, I don't know, we could do the math. It's a 10K in NCAA cross. So probably like 31 something, maybe 32. And I think I finished like, it tore like not that long after. So I think I came through 8K like in 26 something, which is falling really far off of the pace that I was on
right
for that 2K. And then I think I finished the race in like 34 low.
Ooh,
I think I beat like 3 people or 4 people.
Gosh.
Like it was getting to the point, like I remember like race officials trying to get me to step off the course, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna finish. Because it was just like my foot was like failing me. Like I was literally like stepping into the ground, and then like my leg would collapse, and I'd step and then collapse, and like so I'm just powering off my left leg basically for 2 miles.
Oh my gosh.
But anyways, that kind of started a longer cascade of stuff, and I kind of would have like some stress reaction, stress fracture type stuff. Like I was kind of riddled with injuries kind of the rest of my collegiate career. So that wasn't exactly the most ideal either. I probably wasn't taking the most care of myself from a nutritional standpoint either, or from a stress or from other stuff. I was like super invested in like pretty much everything I was doing. And so it was good because it kind of got me to where I got as quick as I did. But at the same time, my running definitely kind of suffered there. So that's a long story to say that like I never really got in good shape to run a good cross country season again, really, or a good like 5K for that matter. I think I just basically would run like low 15s the rest of my career at that point. And like I would run mostly 1500s because which is kind of a nice segue into the conversation today, because it's like mileage didn't have to be quite as high.
Right.
You can kind of work into some things. And I think I got down to, I think 354 a few times, which is okay. It was good enough to get me into the Mount Sac relays, and I was good enough to make some races. And we would do the double, which we'll talk about, later today, but where you basically, it's not uncommon for people to go run Mount Sac in the morning and then go run Brian Clay at Azusa Pacific in the evening. And so
why not
doing some of those races and kind of stuff like that. So I kind of became more of like just a 1500 guy by default. I ran 800s, but I wasn't good at them. My PR in high school, I think for the 400 was probably like, it was pretty soft. It was like 56 maybe, which is not that good. And then in college, I also like way back step here, but I also like, I think I was from a physical standpoint maturing as well. So I think, do you know this, that I was 2 years ahead in school?
No, see, that's why I asked this question, David, because I actually don't know any of this about you either. So
yeah, people are like, how are you doing what you're doing? I have the weird birthday where I kind of started a year early anyways, but I skipped a grade on top of that. So I was people were having to buy cough medicine for me for my first 2.5 years of college. I couldn't go, and my roommates would have to get me things. I graduated before I was 21.
Oh, wow.
And so like, I think I kind of grew too.
Yeah.
And I think my body had a lot of stuff going on top of all the other stuff I was going on. So it wasn't the greatest time from an athletic experience, but where was I going with that? Oh, the speed kind of started to develop. Like then I got my 400 down to about 52 being a distance boy. Right. So it's it's not amazing, but it's not horrible, you know? And then like in some of those 15s, for those that are kind of in that 350-ish crowd, like a lot of those races will go out pretty hard, but then they'll slow down tremendously over the second and third lap. And then it'll just be a fast bell lap.
Yeah.
And so it's like that actually came in handy because like sometimes I would win races just by closing in like a 59 or a 60. And then like you just somehow magically have a 355 or something, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I was like, how did that math work? Huh? Okay, sure.
Right.
Like,
Whatever.
go
You're done.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. But so I kind of just mostly was 1500 in college. I mean, I'd run like some low 25-ish 8Ks, like more mid, probably like 25-20s, maybe 25-30s here and there. But yeah, it wasn't ideal, you know? So I never really was in great shape to have the adaptations to hit a truly hard 5K or 8K in a way that I knew my body was capable of doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I probably would have excelled more at the 3K and 5K and those types of distances. Probably not as much 10K at that time. I think I was still kind of on the younger side, and I don't know if I had the maturation to lock in for 25 laps.
Sure.
But I think that's kind of largely why I was more of a 1500 runner. So I was kind of a 1500 by default. I don't know if it was my best event, because I could kind of run for a month and a half and then go run low 15s, you know, like, so I probably had more potential there to do something beyond that. But I don't know. That's all shoulda, coulda, woulda though. You know, that's all.
Sure. And what's fun is you can still race those distances now. And
right.
Yeah. Isn't your 5K time faster now than it was in college?
Yeah.
Then?
I mean, like what, 8-9 years after college, I ran a 1440 something. So,
that's awesome.
I'm plugging in my charger because I totally forgot to charge this laptop before we. There we go. But good thing I have it plugged in though. So now we're in. But I think, and even now, I mean, that 1440 was like a massive negative split. I think the last 1600 was like right around it was like low 430s because my last 800 was under 210. Yeah. So it was, So there's still some stuff in the tank.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we don't get that many opportunities to go for it though. Right. Like, and then like when you are truly in the shape to attack a hard distance, I think with the marathon and some of the longer distances, there's so much of a rhythm piece of like, the paces themselves aren't that fast. There's like a saying that we always say like, oh, like that pace isn't fast. It's just hard to sustain it.
Right. Yes.
So, like,
it's so simple.
So it's like if you go and run like, I don't know, let's say a 70-minute half marathon is about 520-ish miles. 520 is not that fast for someone who's looking to run that time.
Right.
You just got to run 13 of them.
Yeah.
So the training changes a little bit and the goal changes a little bit. So, but in the case of a 5K, right, like you only have 3 miles. So if you go out and you're, 10 seconds off pace, you're going to have to cut that time off somewhere.
Right.
So the margin for error is, I think, a little bit tighter. But if you can close well and you're tough and you're a good racer, you can always make that time up over the last K or so, which is, I think, another blessing in that race, that the swings can be more drastic, but they can happen over a much shorter period of time. Whereas like if you have a few bad miles and a half and then you got to just slowly grind out, and cut it down and cut it down and cut it down, because you're not going to just race it back without being fried for the next 10K, right? Or whatever.
Yeah. I feel like the 5K, if you go out slow, you can make it up. If you go out too fast, you're just out of luck. Like there's coming back from going out too fast in a 5K. Yeah.
And I mean, have you done it on?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have you done it on a track?
I've never raced the 5K on the track, actually.
Death on the track in a 5K is brutal.
Because you've just got to keep going.
You just keep going. And you're by yourself. Like, because usually if you fall, because in a track race, they almost always seed you. I mean, you're doing them right now. So everyone has pretty good seated times close to each other, right?
Yeah.
So if you fall off the wheel, like, It's just you.
It's just sadness.
You're
and
just
pain.
miserable and just finishing. Yeah.
Yes.
But when you are in it, it's pretty fun. It's kind of exhilarating, especially if you're in it to win it, like in the last couple laps.
Right. And that benefit of like being in a group that's maybe pulling you along at a faster pace than you could do like in a time trial on your own is huge too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that'll segue us into the next question.
Yeah. So basically David and I came up with this topic. Mainly, I think I suggested it actually because, people who have listened to the podcast for the past couple of years know I've been focusing mainly on the marathon, but I kind of got tired of beating my head against the wall with that. And I decided it was time to try some like 800s and miles. So that's what I've been doing all winter and having a lot of fun. So, and people had asked me like, oh, your training must be really different. Like, can you guys talk more about that? So here we are. So maybe we can segue into the different energy systems and that are involved in shorter races. And I think one of the big misconceptions is that shorter races are just, quote unquote anaerobic. And that actually turns out not to be the case. So can you tell our listeners about the different energy systems, when they're active and like maybe the percentages, if you know them, like for the 8, the mile, etc.
I used to, man. Yeah. When I was an ex-phys nut back in the day, like that I used to know that the percentages roughly. I don't off the top of my head. So if anyone has those and wants to comment them, or if you know them, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, I've got them here.
Going off of the general energy systems, though, some people refer to it as what they call bioenergetics. Like you've got 3 main energy systems for creating energy. One is your ATP, CP pathway, which is basically your immediate sources of energy. So within your tissue, you have these kind of ATP stores. We'll just use ATP kind of as energy, quote unquote, that are already there. They're quick acting. If you need them, they're there. That's your baseball swing. That's your tennis swing. Like that's like a lot of your quicker motions. You need to do something right now. So that's your store to do it. The great thing is that it's very quick and it is very efficient, but it only lasts for about 10 seconds. Yep. And so like, unless you're running the 100-meter in under 10 seconds, it's like, that's about the extent of that energy system. So the fail safe for that, because obviously there are events longer than that, are the other pathways. And so you have glycolysis, which is essentially the breakdown of carbohydrates for energy. And then you have oxidation, or beta oxidation, or whatever the heck one wants to call it. There's a million names for it. But using fats, lipids, also carbohydrates, but using an aerobic metabolism base for it. So you have an anaerobic and an aerobic side of it. And so in the anaerobic side, you're basically looking, we'll just start with anaerobic glycolysis here. So glucose, basically 6 carbon chain molecule, cuts it in half. It comes into these 2 molecules that are called pyruvate. And in this situation, you don't have the oxygen to pump that into the mitochondria for an oxidative response. So what it does is it takes this thing called NADH and it basically like strips the hydrogen. Like you get these byproduct of the ATP you're trying to produce with this stuff, and it clings it onto a molecule called lactate. And lactate is... I feel like it's such a taboo word. Everyone always says lactate, like, oh my God. No. Yeah. But like lactate's not a bad thing. It's a buffer, right? Yeah. So like we were talking about bicarbonate earlier, bicarbonate helps buffer the pH of things. And that's why in events like the 800, it's as effective as it is. But lactate essentially helps you clear away that hydrogen and then gets moved over. And then that gets reprocessed elsewhere.
Right. You can use lactate as fuel.
Yeah,
there's pathways for that. Yeah,
totally. It'll just get kicked back in and your body will do stuff with it up until you hit a threshold, which is your lactate threshold. That is where things are not so fun anymore.
Yeah.
When you go beyond that. And so that is but that for the lack of things, that's your anaerobic metabolism. I don't want to go too much into the weeds there.
Right.
Aerobic metabolism. So we'll start off with the glycolytic side of it. So again, glycolysis, breaking down of glucose, like basically, and glycogen. So glycogen, I didn't mention that, is also stored primarily skeletal muscle in the liver. So there are also stores readily available to help break sugar down for you. That's kind of the idea. So when you're carb loading and stuff like that, that's what you're essentially trying to build up a little bit so that you have more stores. If you don't have the stores, you got your blood sugar. Not ideal. That's called bonking if you go too far. But we have all kinds of fail safes for this stuff. But when it goes into the aerobic cycle, then it goes into what we have this thing called the Krebs cycle. It's really long. It's somewhat complicated. But it spits out, energy, but it's a lot longer and it takes a while to do it. So when you're doing some of these shorter distance races, it's going to be a combination of both. None of this acts in isolation. And then same thing with the fats, beta oxidation, breaking it down, the lipids, and then stringing it out and taking the triglycerides, boom, 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 break it, put it in, do its thing, spit out some ATP for you. Like I don't feel the need to go into the major details of that. But at the end of the day, you get energy and there's some byproducts along the way. The one that's the most relevant here in the shorter distances is going to be lactate. But that is also a huge marker to look at for the longer distance races too, being, your 1500, your 5K, and even the marathon, right? Like you're going to have fluctuations in paces. And if you dip a little too deep into the well, there's not much coming back after that.
Right.
And so like, that's why you see people place so much emphasis on lactate thresholds. And it is, you are able to measure it via blood. You can prick it and have little lactate measurements, and it's usually measured in millimoles per liter, but those are essentially the three different energy systems. And so you're not going to be using the phosphagen one much. That's like
that's what gets you off the line, basically.
That's what gets you off the line. Yeah. And then you're going to have kind of a mix between aerobic and anaerobic glycolysis, and also breaking down of the lipids. So
I looked it up before our episode. And of course, depending on which research study you read, the percentages will be different. And it differs whether you're talking about elite athletes, elite males, elite females. Mm-hmm. But for elite males in the 800, it's 60% aerobic, 40% anaerobic, which I think a lot of people...
I didn't mention timelines. Yeah. So for the anaerobic, I'm so glad you brought that up. I just don't mean to cut you off, but it's the... I didn't mention that. So for your phosphagen system, it's about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
For your anaerobic glycolysis, you're looking at roughly 2 minutes, and that's max.
Right.
That's so unless you're running sub 2, even if you're running sub 2 in the 8, it's going to be a mix. Like you said, it's going to be kind of a 60-40. Your body doesn't want to die. So it'll find ways to share the energy load.
Yeah. And all three of those energy systems start working at the same time. It's just glycolysis takes a little longer, and the aerobic system takes even longer to actually get up and running. Yeah.
But sorry, what were you? So
the 800, looking at elite males, 60-40, 60% aerobic, 40% anaerobic. 1500 is 77% aerobic, 23% anaerobic. So really the 15 and the mile, mostly an aerobic race. And then the 3000, even more so, 86%, 14%. So basically anything over the 400 is using the aerobic system to supply the majority of energy. Talking about timelines, the phosphagen system and ATP are immediate. As soon as you start off the line, that's what gets you moving. Glycolysis takes about 20 to 30 seconds to reach its max capacity. And like David mentioned, it lasts up to 2 minutes. Some studies have found it only lasts about 90 seconds. So again, depending how good of an 800 runner you are, that could be,
There's not many.
Yeah. So for me, running 225, I'm even more shifted into that aerobic, percentage than, Keely Hodgkinson, right? Who's 40 seconds faster than Naomi. 30 seconds. She's
faster
she's
than
so fast.
My PR. I think I've run 156.
Yeah, and she's 150,
155. I think.
Yeah,
she got me.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But I wasn't an 800 person.
If you were, then okay.
If I was, yeah. She's baller. She's so good.
So, David mentioned with the aerobic system that the Krebs cycle is involved. And because it's a multi-step process, it takes longer to occur. So when you get off the line in a race, it's taking about 90 to 120 seconds to reach its maximum capacity. So all three systems start up, but each one is maximally active at different points in the timeline of your race, right? But basically, if your race is longer than 90 to 120 seconds, the vast majority of it is going to be fueled by your aerobic system.
Yeah.
Yeah. And David mentioned lactate. And, everybody's heard about lactate, thinks lactate is bad. Like, lactate is why my muscles hurt after I do a hard workout. Lactate really gets a bad rap. And we really know now that it is not, one, the cause of muscle soreness. Two, like I said, it can actually be used as a fuel source in certain pathways. And because of that, it can actually delay fatigue if you train your body to better utilize lactate. That's what, if you've heard the term lactate shuttling, that's what that is. Like, your glycolysis system produces lactate, and then it is shuttled elsewhere and enters a different pathway and can be used as fuel. But the reason why lactate is so useful to measure is because the things that do cause muscle soreness and increase fatigue, like increased hydrogen ions and a subsequent decrease in pH, are almost exactly correlated with blood lactate levels. And it's easier to measure blood lactate than to measure like blood pH. So that's why, any professional runner and a lot of recreational runners are using lactate monitors to either set their training zones, use them during their workouts to make sure that they're training at an intensity that is at whatever target lactate level they're aiming for. So basically, lactate's not bad. It's, it's gotten a bad reputation, but it is quite useful to measure because of its correlation with hydrogen ions and a decrease in blood pH.
1000%. Is there a difference between how much lactate production is produced across different various distances?
So of course, so if you think about a 400 or a shorter event where your glycolysis system is a greater percentage of the total energy contributor, you're going to have astronomical blood lactate levels. And actually, a way to figure out part of your lactate curve is to run like a maximum like 400 to 600 meter effort, and then take blood lactate readings for like the next 6 to 8 minutes. And like your blood lactate will continue to increase for minutes after finishing that. That's why you feel so terrible after running a 400 for so long afterwards, because like your blood lactate levels continue to go up even though you've stopped moving. So yes, you're in shorter events. If you took blood lactate readings for minutes afterwards, you would see much higher values after like a 400, a 600, and 800 than you would even after like a 1500 or a mile. Because of the different proportion of contribution from that glycolytic system as compared to the aerobic system.
That's a great answer. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Look at us hearkening back to our exercise physiology days.
I know, man. I'm pretty sure I've got like a permanent little dot here from just getting pricked in that left index so many times. I'm not kidding. My
bachelor's is in molecular biology, so I feel like at some point I did actually have the Krebs cycle memorized, but I can't tell you like how long that stayed in my brain. It certainly has not lasted, 20 plus years later.
I know.
But it was there at one point.
But do you know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah. Here's a fun fact about mitochondria.
Yeah.
You might know, you probably know this, but our listeners might not. So mitochondria have their own DNA, and we actually get our mitochondrial DNA from our mothers. So like performance in endurance athletics is actually highly correlated with like your mom's mitochondrial DNA.
That was actually a fun fact for me. I
Yes.
didn't realize it was on the
Yeah.
maternal side. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did know about the DNA part, but I didn't realize. Yeah.
So basically, pick your mom well and you'll be a good
Yes.
endurance athlete. Yeah. And of course, there's so many
Like
other.
reverse engineering yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, mitochondrial DNA is not the only genetic factor that makes someone a good athlete, but
Yeah.
obviously your mitochondria are what help you, power your cells and fuel your muscles. So it's a big part of whether someone is a good endurance athlete in particular, like mitochondrial density and enzymes and whatnot. But now I'm digging deep into the recesses of my brain. And
see, this is what I'm here for, is to just make us dig so deep that we just end up rotting away our brains on air.
I'm just going to be in the fetal
off
position
topic.
later.
Yeah. It's a safe space. We don't need to do this.
That's right. Yeah. I'll remember my organic chemistry class in college where like the average test score was like 52%.
This is the way.
It is. Yep. Okay. So we've talked about like the science behind middle distance racing, basically. So, one of the big things people ask me is like, how is training different for mid distance racing? And I'll talk a little bit about how my training's been different. And then like you can throw in everything I missed. So the biggest thing is when you're training for mid distance compared to say a marathon or a half marathon, your overall mileage is going to be lower. Your speed days are going to be faster. Your tempo days are probably going to be at a higher intensity. Like when you're training for a marathon, you might do a lot of work at threshold. Whereas if you're training for the 8 or the 1500/mile, your tempo days might be like progression runs from like threshold down to 5K pace. Typically you use paces faster than lactate threshold as like your endurance support paces as compared to LT. And, interestingly, I was reading Steve Magnus's book, Science of Running, recently, and he actually recommends that people training for like the 8 and the 15 who tend to be like more fast twitch oriented runners not do a lot of work at LT because it can affect their performance, which I actually found kind of interesting. So the other thing I'd say that is different for me and should be different for people who want to go from like marathon, half marathon to like 1500, 800 is strength training just becomes so much more important. I mean, you should be strength training if you're training for a marathon, but when you're training for events where you need more speed, then you need to be lifting heavy, you need to be doing plyometrics, you need to be doing strength training that really improves your ability to produce high amount of force at a fast speed. And the term for that is rate of force development, because the harder you can hit the ground, the more efficient you will run and the faster you will run. So what would you add to that, David?
I think that was great. I would probably say, like, in summary, in some ways, like when I look at middle distance training and I look at long distance training, the general concepts are still pretty similar, right? Like you said, the speed days are still there, but the speed days are a little faster. Tempo days might be a little slower, right? Like, like things might just change up a little bit on what they look like. But usually in most programming, people are doing some speed work. People are doing some tempo work. Some people are doing long runs, et cetera, et cetera. But I think one thing that you might see a little bit different in middle distance specific programs, though, might be some of the usage of different kind of acceleration drills or speed development days, or some people have a knack for wickets. But people will use that for all distances, so that's not fair. That's not fair to say. But I think and a lot more plyometric stuff too. So you'll see a lot more like hurdle hops and like different kinds of stuff people will do in stadiums or benches and things like that. And the whole idea is to work on, like you said, creating high amounts of force over a short duration of time. And I think it's really, I'm glad that you said that, because I think in the distance world, there's this obsession with like a quiet footstep, like how nimble can you be? I don't know. Have you ever seen this with anyone?
Yeah.
Where it's like you're not efficient if you're not like gently hitting the ground. You know, it's like, oh, you should be gliding over the ground.
Right.
Like you're floating, and it's like, no, you are hammering the crap out of that track and trying to go fast. You ever watch Noah Lyles run a 200? Like that man is just blasting that leg into the ground. But that you'd have to create a large amount of force to go fast. There's no way around it, you know? And one of the reasons why their footsteps are as quiet as they are, even at some of those speeds, it's that they are so strong and they are so good at stabilizing and coordinating the move, like the sheer amount of force and the amount of coordination that goes into creating that force. Well, like they have made it one with them. And I think one thing that I heard a long time ago, I honestly don't remember who said it. Shoot. Well, whoever said it, but that was speed is a skill.
Yes. I've heard that. I don't know who said that either. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like, sure, there's some genetic components that go into it and how fast you can go, yada, yada. But if you account for all of those things, like at a certain point, in order to get faster, like you have to be better at moving your body. And I think that is probably like one of the largest differences is like, if you're trying to break 4 minutes in the mile, you're going to have to string together 4:59s. There's no way around it, right? Like that's the time you got to run. You got to be pretty good at running sub 60s. And same thing goes like if you're trying to break 2 in the 800, it's the same thing. You should probably be able to run a 55. You know, 56 at the slowest. And if you're running 56, like you better be tough as nails running 258s or 259s, you know, like, So I think that's probably the biggest thing. And there's usually a little bit more of an emphasis on some of the lighter plyos being like your drills, your skips, I mean, you ever go to a track meet and you just see sprinters warming up until who knows, like how long have they been here? I've been here for 5 hours and they've been on the track the whole time. Like, you know, like it feels that way at least. Like, I feel like with distance runners, a lot of times people go and they're like short little warm up. They do a couple skips and they do some strides and they're like, all right, let's do it. It's like, it's not that way when you look at the shorter distances. And it's part of it is warming your tissues up too, to like,
absolutely.
Like this is a quick, hard neuromuscular stimulus that like we have a job to do and there's not that much time to do it. And if you want to do it at the best of your capability, you have to get your body ready to adopt that stimulus. And so I think that neuromuscular side of things too, there's a much larger emphasis on the middle distance side of things than in the long distance side of things. Like in the long distance side of things, it's kind of like, okay, do your skips, do your strides, you know, so that when you start your race, you don't feel flat. But it's like, again, you're not running quite as fast in those longer races where it's like, in let's say a 5K, I think like if you are a collegiate listening to this and you're thinking about breaking 15 in the 5K, or if you're someone who is listening, you're like, I just want to break 20 in the 5K. Like the same thing kind of stands here. But like the second that gun goes off and you hit pace, 72-second quarters are still not that slow. So then that's 15 flat. So that's 4:48 1600s. And it takes a while for that oxidative system to kick in, which is your largest friend in that race. So if you dip into that anaerobic side a little too much, a little too early in those first 2 minutes, like sometimes things don't look as fun down the line. And so being able to kind of train a little bit of all of the systems is really important, I think, in the middle distances, even more so. And I think it's interesting too, because a lot of times people from what we consider aerobic mechanisms actually test higher in the middle distance athletes. Things like VO2 max and stuff like that. And it's partially because of their ability to just produce sheer amounts of lactate and clear it, right? And that allows for a greater capacity to push into a quote unquote maximal level. So that's why that's a rant / lesson / podcast like for another time about why VO2 max isn't an end all be all metric.
It's not a good metric at all.
Means. Yeah.
I think you made a really good point about the importance of drills. And yes, it is all about like priming your nervous system to recruit your muscles in such a way that you can produce the high amount of force you need to produce for a, 2-minute 800 if you're an elite female, or, 145 for male or whatever. I think it's also a good point to bring up that both 800 and 1500/mile runners can kind of be divided into different groups. Like some people are more on like the speed side and some people are more on like the endurance side. And those people may need to be trained differently because of their strengths and weaknesses. But for all of them, it is important to work on both aspects, right? Like if you're an 800 runner, you need to be able to run fast. So you're doing like a fair amount of work at 400 pace and even faster. And even 1500-mile runners should be doing that as well. But if, like, let's say you're an 800 runner and speed is more your strength, you're coming at it from the speed side, then like the specifics of your workouts may be more tuned to, one, strengthen your strength, but also to address your relative weakness in that like speed endurance component.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, and any good coach is going to have a mix of everything.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, you're going to cater to the strengths of your athlete, and then you're going to mitigate the the things they're not as good at. But it's like we got to get better at that if you want to get to the next level too.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that's a great point because you see it sometimes. And I think with this Grand Slam track event that's going on right now, people are running off distances.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of fun to watch, right? Because now you're seeing the 800 specialists run a 1500, and now you're seeing 1500 5K athletes like Jessica Hull go run a 158 800, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's just kind of like, it's cool to watch. And I think it's interesting. So much of it too on the track is like race tactics and how the race plays out.
Right.
Because some races are going to be better catered towards people that have speed, and some are going to be better catered to people who have strength.
Yep.
And depending on how that race goes, some people that have strength, like that's when you'll see that 1500 5K person place really, really well in an 800 because of the way that the day just laid out.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting. And now more than ever, so many people, you just have to be so good at closing.
Yes.
Like that in itself is something that people are starting to train more and more, I think. And it's a tricky one because a lot of it is just kind of grit and just going for it, and no matter how tired you are and how much pain you're in, but there is a way to kind of work on that,
Absolutely.
As you're getting deeper into those workouts, maybe you throw in some really hard 200s or hundreds at the very end or something like, so your body gets used to having a neuromuscular stimulus of like, oh crap, it's time to go.
Right.
Like, sometimes the bell does that for people. Sometimes it's competition. So
And a really good way, like you mentioned, is like at the end of, let's say, like a threshold workout or like a 5K pace workout, doing like 4 to 6 like hill sprints that are like 20 to 30 seconds long. Coming at it from a neuromuscular standpoint, you're teaching your body to better recruit a greater percentage of your muscle fibers, because when we're running, we're never recruiting 100% of our fibers. Our body is cycling on and off. So if you do those sprints at the end of a workout, when, some fibers are already fatigued, you're going to force your body to learn how to recruit other fibers when you're fatigued to run fast. And that does transfer quite well to improving your kick at the end of a race.
1000%.
Yeah. So we have a lot of topics that we have written down, but I think we should skip to
I know, I'm like looking at the time, like, dang.
Let's talk about shoes.
We're about to do a 3-hour masterclass on this. Let's go. No.
All right. So shoes for mid-distance training and racing. I mean, I think the biggest difference is like you're racing in spikes. So spikes to some sound scary, right? Like I was not like that concerned about getting back into spikes after 25 years just because I test so many like minimal shoes, and I don't do all of them. Actually, I don't do most of my runs in like max stack or plated shoes, but transitioning into spikes needs to be done thoughtfully and carefully. So why don't you say how like at the beginning of each season you transition into spikes, and then how I did it is any different transitioning back into them after 25 years, I can talk about that too.
Totally. Yeah. There's not really any perfect way to do it, but at some point or another, you're going to have to put them on. Because if you just go to not wearing them at all to wearing them, especially if you're running the 5K distance, I can't tell you how many 5Ks I've gone into and you get 3,200 in, and then it's like my calves. Like, oh my gosh, what have I done? So you do have to train that to some degree. I'm a big fan of like tossing them on for like the last rep or two of a workout, just so that you get the stimulus of having them. And then as you get deeper into the season, you put them on a little bit more. Maybe you're doing some more race specific stuff. Like you want to feel what it is like. You want to like match as close as you can to that race so that your body isn't freaking out when you do it. Right. With that said, spikes are harder, on your calves there. So it's like, if you're not used to wearing them, you definitely have to gradually build up to it. I feel like there was like the old school mentality of like, no, we're always working out on our spikes. We're always racing on our spikes,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's a little bit on the other extreme, right?
Right.
Like, now you can't do quite as much work because you're just beat up all the time. But there's a balance, I think you have to kind of look at the workout that you're doing. I think like the perfect workouts to kind of simulate some of it. If you're doing 400s, like let's say a classic 400 workout is somewhere between 10 and 12 by 400, probably at race pace.
Yeah.
This is probably more 1500 to 5K runners, more 5K probably.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fours for race pace 15. But that's a common workout for people doing that event, just a little bit slower. But like maybe the last 4 are in spikes, and that's a mile worth of work still, right? Like not counting any rests that you're doing if you have some kind of a float, or if you're doing, or just even just the basic jogging around and walking around on rest recovery. But same thing goes for like if you're doing a somewhere between a 6 to 10 by K, if you're kind of on the longer side of distances for track work. If you're going to race a track 10K in spikes, you should probably get pretty used to wearing those spikes. So same thing. It's just getting used to wearing it at different paces and just slowly integrating it. Another great way to do it, if you are nervous about going that long that soon, you can also do your strides or like do pickups afterwards. So like how you were saying with the hill sprints, you could hit some 150s or something, or some 200s, even if it's like at 5K pace. Like even if you're just running, like let's say if I'm only using 15 flat because the numbers are easy.
Yeah.
But like if you're trying to run 72-second quarters, running a few 36s and spikes shouldn't be that hard. It's not going to like ruin your day as far as like, it's not going to shred your legs after your workout to run a couple 36s.
Right.
Like,
and if it does, you have some work to do.
Right. So it's like just kind of slowly integrating it into the system so that your body doesn't freak out as much when you start getting going for real.
Right.
And then you just make it a little bit longer, and your body will get more and more used to it. And usually you don't end up doing quite the full race distance in the spikes as far as work goes, especially for like 5K. Like if you're doing 5K of work in spikes, that is kind of a lot on a training day. But if you're really experienced and you're really used to it, hey, why not? I don't know. But again, at that point though, you know what you're doing.
Sure.
you know what you're signing up for if you're that deep into it. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
But just slowly integrating it, and then maybe taking like 30-ish% of whatever that workout is and doing that last third in the spikes, or even less than that at first.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I've been doing the 8 and the mile. So I started out just doing like a few strides before my workout in spikes, and then all my strides, and then maybe like 1 or 2 reps in spikes, and just gradually increasing it until I would do my full workout set in spikes. But again, when you're training for the 8 or the mile, you're not talking about a huge amount of volume there. And by doing that, my calves I knew that I had done something different, but I never had like a point where I was like, oh no, my calves are really sore. It's affecting my running. I actually feel like running on the indoor track had a bigger effect on my calves from the curves. Like my right calf was pretty sore like the first couple weeks that I was training there, just from this track nearby has like really short straights and really strangely shaped curves where they like curve and then they're straight and then they curve again. So like the curve is really sharp at those points. But again, like after a few weeks, that all went away. It was fine. So the main point is, just like anything, your body needs time to adapt. Your tissues need time to adapt. Your tendons, your muscles, your ankle, your foot. So gradually increasing your body's exposure to running in a spike. A spike is essentially a minimalist shoe that is super stiff, is usually zero drop or close to it. So it's going to stress your feet, ankles, and calf muscles a ton. And if you do all of your other training in, super trainers, then it's going to be like a big wake-up call to those tissues. Whereas if you normally do some of your training in minimalist shoes, or even like, it's so crazy to think of like a shoe like the Cyclone 2 as being like a lower stack shoe, but these days it kind of is, so just something that actually flexes in the forefoot and, isn't 40 mils in the heel can actually be beneficial for regular training. But that's a whole nother episode. And then, I would just say a thing that I've noticed in my training this winter is like, I don't find myself reaching for super shoes for like my tempo days or my long runs like I would in marathon training. One, you're just not as like, marathon training is so much cumulative fatigue, and that's the point. But when you're training for shorter races, you can't go into your speed workout tired. Like, you really need to be
you want to be able to
pretty
do it well.
fresh. So I just didn't feel like I needed those super shoes as like my little security blanket, like sometimes you do when you're like 6 weeks out from a marathon. So, that's just like my personal observation. But yeah, I'm definitely like barely using super shoes at all unless I have one for testing.
Yeah. And when I was in a track season, it was very similar. My flat that I would do most of my workouts in was the Cyclone. That was kind of my shoe.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So
it can do anything. Yeah.
It's relatively low to the ground by today's standards.
What is it?
It's still like a decent amount of foam on it though. What is it, like 20? It's like high 20s, right? Like 28 maybe?
Yeah. I can't remember if the heel is like 32. Here, I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, that is a good thing to look up.
And I just go to our review because I know that we'll have it right at the top.
There you go.
Let's see. Oh no, it says unknown.
Got us.
Let's see if Cyclone 3 has it.
Running Warehouse will have it.
It's 28-23. Okay, so I mean,
I was right. Yeah.
That's that's low by today's standards. Like, there are shoes that are literally double that.
Yeah, the people are training in daily.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like moderate to low, and it's flexible, and that's going to mirror roughly kind of what a track spike. No, it's not, but it's better than the other ones.
Exactly.
It kind of bridges the gap a little easier.
Yeah, I feel like the original Streak Fly is similar to, like, it's even.
That one's in the low 30s, though, I think.
Yeah, but
it's a little higher, but
it doesn't have much of a forefoot rocker, and it's pretty flexible and like relatively soft for its stack height and the fact that it has ZoomX. So like, that shoe, didn't really live up to the hype as being like a 5K super shoe, but it's absolutely my favorite shoe when I have like a day of hill reps to do. It's just, for me, it feels perfect for that. Waiting for Streak Fly 2 to show up. I can't wait to test that.
I'm just a sad boy over here. I don't have a Vomero. I don't have any of it. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see. They might come in.
Yes.
I might be crying now after this recording is over. But
well, I mean, isn't that what we all do after each recording?
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm
this
joking.
Is taking a dark turn. Yeah, it was nice recording with you too, Andrea. That was as we slowly just get more and more unhinged.
Totally. Yes. So I guess the last thing that's on our list, and it's more so just something interesting that I read about Sifan Hassan's training. So how do people train for mid distance and longer distances at the same time? So Sifan Hassan is, one of the most incredible female athletes in the world. And she did, she had quite an amazing Olympics, winning the gold in the marathon, the bronze in the 5,000, and the bronze in the 15. Is that right? No, she skipped.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
But she, she
dropped out of the 15. I don't.
Did she medal?
I think she chose
10?
not to race the 15 or something.
She was duking it out with someone and fell on the first day.
That's right. Yes.
On the track. And then that kind of cascaded some other things.
But anyway, she was training for 1,500 to marathon in the Olympics. And I read an interview with her coach, and they said that, they were figuring out how to best prepare for this crazy endeavor that worked out very well for her. And they basically said they just focused on training the extreme. So they trained her, like her speed days were like that of a 1,500 runner. And her long runs and tempo days were that of a marathon runner. And
sounds good.
Makes perfect sense. And actually, that's probably a good way for a lot of marathon runners to train. Mm-hmm. So, and, there are coaching systems that, kind of keep more speed work into their training plans than others. But, obviously it worked for her. That sprint at the end of the marathon was pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm reliving it. Yeah, you're right. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing. I think it's interesting, too, when you look at most elite athletes, they are training both systems. They are doing top speed work. They are hitting everything, even if they're running 26.2.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's they're always a little bit ready for all distances, so it's not quite as exclusive to be like, oh, wow, the marathoner ran a 5K. Like, could you believe that?
Yeah.
Like, but the 15 is still kind of wild, though, because that is fast, right? Like, that is dipping into some new speeds. And if you're going to have to go toe to toe with Tsegay over the last, you're running with some savages at 1,500 and Faith Kipyegon.
Yeah.
And oh my God, to think that you're going to run a marathon and a 1,500 in the same week at the highest possible level is kind of crazy.
Yes.
But yeah, they do a little bit of both. And I imagine in her case specifically, they were, hitting those extremes pretty hard. If we're going fast, we're going fast. If we're going long, we're going long. But I know a lot of marathoners do like doing speed work because it does make their marathon pace feel easier.
Right.
And the better way you can make 26.2 feel easy for as long as you can, that helps.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Psychologically, physically, everything. So definitely a good mix. But yeah, that is crazy. I mean, Sifan is amazing. I just love that she wows herself too.
I know. Yeah. Her interview after the London Marathon is my all-time favorite running interview ever.
What am I doing? I'm so stupid.
I can't believe I finished a marathon. Well, you won it too, but
you just only won a major,
right? Yeah,
after
you're
stopping
finished.
twice.
Yeah, I think she stopped 3 times to stretch. Yeah,
and
she had to
stretch
missed
her
a bottle
hip out and slowly caught back up. She is, I think, with her too. She's an anomaly because I think her brain, she is just so tough. Mm-hmm. I think she can get to a gear that just most people can't get to.
Right.
That she's just willing to just go crush it.
Yeah.
And I think her brain will go blank because you hit those interviews and they'll be you see that? Oh my God. Where'd that come from? I don't know. You're the one that did it.
You did that.
Us.
Yeah.
She's just as shocked as us. So I think something short wires where she just goes full send,
yes.
It's pretty amazing to watch. Those people are so cool to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we get to be graced with Sifan Hassan's racing abilities because she is maybe the best ever.
Right.
Across. I mean, that's insane range. That is insane range, even if she doesn't have any world records, because she doesn't anymore, right? Because Faith has it in the 15,
right?
And then Faith broke it in the 5, so she doesn't. Yeah. So, and then someone broke Faith's in the 5K, I think, recently too.
Oh, right. I was writing about it in a review recently. The woman who won gold in Paris. What is her name?
Chair.
No. Beatrice Chebet. Yeah.
Hey,
How can we forget her?
Chebet,
Yeah.
Chebet. She's great. She's so good. They're all so good. Like, we're in such an era right now where it's like first through like 12th are all just amazing.
It's incredible. So the reason I had looked that up is I was reviewing the Nike Air Victory.
She's so good.
Yeah, the Nike Air Victory 2 spike, which is like a mid-distance spike. She won gold in the 5 and the 10 and broke the world record in the 5 in the Air Victory. Which the thought of doing
that.
I know. Yeah. But
it's the same thing in Adidas too. A lot of them will race in the Ambition for 5K, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. Like those spikes are so aggressive, but I think when they're running that fast, like they like to have that aggressive feel.
Right. But she wore it in the 10K too.
Yeah, that's not. Well, no, Nico Young races in the Ambition, I think, in the 10K.
Oh, does he? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Don't fact check. Like, no, I'll have to fact check that, but I think he does. Because like I'm always looking, I'm always just
yes, of course, yeah. But Ingebrigtsen was also in the Victory too for the 5.
He likes the Victory. Mm-hmm. Yep, a lot of people like that feeling. I think
it's a nice shoe. Yeah, it's too,
but it's aggressive.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. I mean, but I'm obviously not running a 5K is anywhere near as fast as those ladies. They'd run, 4 miles in the time that I would run.
Will clobber me. Like, it's 14 flat. That's the world record now? Or is it 13
someone
now?
Get under 14? Yeah, she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. I haven't broken 14, so they're cooking. Yeah. They are cooking. They are so good.
Amazing. Yeah. All right. Well, this was a really fun episode, David.
Yeah, it was.
I am glad we got to learn all about your racing background because I didn't know most of that. So that was cool. Yeah. And I hope you all learned a lot about mid-distance racing, and maybe we've even inspired some of you to try some shorter races this year.
They're a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun.
There's a lot of adult track meets. There's a ton of road miles, which are like super accessible to do. You don't obviously run them in spikes, so that's easier. But yeah,
you can always look on. Oh my God, why am I blanking? We're wrapping this up. I need to know this. This is
a lot of the meets are on Direct Athletics and athletic.net.
Direct Athletics. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Because a lot of universities hold open meets.
Right.
And not all of the races are going to be like, D1 college fast. There's plenty of races that are very accessible for the public that people just don't know about. That don't exist. Like Westmont here in Santa Barbara hosts a lot of those kinds of meets. So yeah, if you're interested on getting on the track, do it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for listening. As always, leave us a comment, leave us a review. We love to hear your comments and questions. Thanks, David, for joining me, and we'll see you guys next time.